His attorney leaned in and whispered something, just a few quiet words, no more than a breath. And just like that, Ryan Blackwood's face changed. That confident, self-satisfied smile I had watched across the breakfast table for 15 years vanished completely. His color drained. His fingers twitched. The documents he had been so eager to sign just moments ago started trembling in his hands, like they suddenly weighed 100 pounds. And me, for the first time in 3 years, I smiled. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe, but only if you believe that understanding your self-worth can completely change the outcome of your life. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I read every single one. This is a fictional story inspired by real situations in toxic families. It has been enhanced with AI to make it more vivid, but the emotions are completely real. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Jenna Price. I'm 34 years old, and until 3 months ago, I was married to Ryan Blackwood. 15 years? 15 years of marriage. That's longer than most celebrity relationships survive. Longer than some startups even exist. And definitely longer than my patience should have lasted. But I've always been stubborn. I got that from my grandmother. I met Ryan when I was 17. I had graduated high school early, not because I was some kind of prodigy, but because I was practical, determined, and desperate to get out of my parents' house. I landed a job at Barton and Hale Legal Group as a file clerk. Minimum wage, endless paperwork, paper cuts on every finger. But it was mine. By 18, I had worked my way up to legal assistant. I was good with numbers, good with details, and even better at staying quiet, while paying attention to everything. Ryan was 24 when we met. It was at a client networking event, one of those polished, expensive gatherings where everyone pretends they're already successful. He fit right in, tall, confident, charming in that effortless way that makes people lean in when he speaks. He talked about the future like it already belonged to him, like success was just waiting for him to show up and claim it. He said he was going to build something big, a real estate empire. I told him I could help him file the paperwork. Romantic. Right. We got married when I was 19. Our son, Noah, was born when I was 20. I kept working part-time at the firm while raising him, quietly building my savings, contributing to my retirement account, setting aside every dollar I could. Because my grandmother always said, a woman should have her own money. Not secret money, she always made that clear. Just her own. Something no one could take away from her. When I turned 23, Ryan's business finally started to take off. That's when everything changed. He came to me one night, full of excitement, talking fast, already planning 10 steps ahead. He said he needed me, not just as his wife, but as someone he could trust completely. Someone to manage the books, handle the clients, coordinate contractors, keep everything running behind the scenes. So I quit my job, and I became everything: bookkeeper, office manager, client liaison, interior designer for model homes, marketing coordinator, event planner. I handled every detail while raising Noah, managing our home, and making sure Ryan's world never fell apart. My official title? Wife. My real role. Everything else. For 11 years. I poured everything I had into building Ryan Blackwood's dream. And for 11 years, he took the credit, the awards, the recognition, at every industry event. I stood beside him as Ryan's wife. At every celebration, he thanked his investors, his partners, his incredible team, and his vision. But somehow, he never quite got around to thanking me. Somewhere along the way, things started to change. At first, it was subtle. He stopped asking for my opinion before making decisions. Then he started staying late at the office more often. Then the comments began. Little things, the way I dressed, the meals I cooked, the way I organized the house. And my personal favorite, my lack of ambition. Lack of ambition. I was running his entire back-end operation for free, raising our son, managing our home, and keeping his life from collapsing into chaos. But yes, apparently, I wasn't ambitious enough. Then, 3 months ago, everything cracked. It was a Tuesday evening. I remember because I was cooking his favorite dinner. Of course I was. I had always been that person, the one who kept trying, even when no one noticed. He walked in, loosened his tie, and sat down at the kitchen table. There was something different about his face. Not sadness, not guilt, just calculation, like he was about to close a deal. "Jenna," he said, folding his hands together, "I want a divorce." Just like that. No build-up, no hesitation. And before I could even process those words, he added, just as calmly, "I want the house, the cars, the business, everything." A pause. "You can keep Noah." He said it the same way someone orders food. "I'll take the full package, and you can keep the side dish. Keep Noah." Like our 15-year-old son was some leftover obligation he was generously leaving behind. Like he was doing me a favor. I just stared at him. 15 years. 15 years of marriage reduced to a transaction at the kitchen table. Between the salt shaker and the butter dish. Like I was just another asset he had decided to discard. What I didn't know in that moment, what I wouldn't discover until much later, was that none of this was spontaneous. Ryan had been planning this for months. He already had a lawyer, Gregory Haynes, high-end, ruthless, the kind of attorney who didn't lose. While I had been planning meals and scheduling dentist appointments, Ryan had been planning his exit. Every detail, every step, every move designed to leave me with nothing. I had trusted him with everything, and he had used that trust to build his escape. The next day, his mother showed up, Evelyn Blackwood, a woman who had treated me like hired help for 15 years, suddenly arrived with perfectly styled hair and a perfectly rehearsed expression of concern. She took my hand like we were close, like she hadn't spent a decade and a half quietly undermining me. "You should have tried harder to keep him happy," she said softly. "Men have needs. Dear," she said it slowly, carefully, like she was explaining something to someone who just couldn't quite keep up. Her advice on marriage was almost impressive, considering her own husband spent most of his time at the country club just to avoid being in the same room with her. But somehow, I was the problem. That first week blurred together in a way I can barely describe. Ryan moved me into the guest room. Not asked. Moved. Like I was a temporary inconvenience. Documents started appearing, draft agreements, settlement outlines, timelines. Everything already prepared. Everything already decided. My life was being dismantled. And I hadn't even realized the demolition had started. Everything was happening so fast I could barely keep up. It felt like I was underwater, watching my own life distort and disappear while everyone else stood above, looking down with pity. To them, I was obvious. A woman whose world had just collapsed, a wife discarded after 15 years, a victim who never saw it coming. That's what they believed. But here's the part no one knew. Not Ryan, not his mother, not even the people who thought they knew me best. 3 years ago, I found something. Something buried deep in Ryan Blackwood's own financial records. Something he believed was hidden so well no one would ever question it. And from that moment on, I stopped being the woman everyone thought I was. I didn't confront him. I didn't panic. I didn't say a word. I prepared, quietly, carefully, patiently, for 3 years, before I continue. If you're listening to this and you're already feeling that something isn't quite what it seems, take a second, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every single one. Now, back to the collapse everyone thought was real. Within a week of Ryan announcing the divorce, he had taken complete control. The guest room became my permanent space, not temporarily, not until things settle. Permanent. My walk-in closet was reduced to 2 narrow sections. The rest, he needed. That was the word he used. Needed. The message wasn't subtle. This is no longer your home. 2 weeks later, he stopped pretending entirely. He started bringing her over. Chloe Bennett, 27, worked at his company. Of course she did. She had that polished, effortless look that belonged on social media. Perfect hair, perfect skin, clothes that probably cost more than what I spent on groceries in a month. She walked into my kitchen like she had already replaced me, wore my apron, my grandmother's apron, used my blender to make green smoothies like she was starring in her own lifestyle video. She was younger than my marriage, younger than some of the furniture in that house, but apparently, she made excellent smoothies. So that counted for something. Ryan didn't even try to hide it. He displayed her, like a prize. They sat on my couch, watched my television, ate from my plates, and he would put his arm around her right in front of me, like I wasn't even there, like I had already faded out of existence. The humiliation didn't come all at once. It built, layer by layer. First, he canceled my personal credit card. "We need to separate finances," he said, like he was being logical. Then he canceled the joint account. Then came the suggestion, maybe I should find somewhere else to stay while everything gets sorted out. My home, the place I had built, managed, maintained, and I was being asked to leave it. Evelyn came over soon after, to help me pack. That's what she called it. What she actually did was go through my life and decide what I deserved to keep. Old clothes. Fine. Some family photos. Not all. She paused when she reached my grandmother's recipe box. Held it a little too long, like she was considering whether she had a claim to that too. The things I wasn't allowed to take were very clear. Any jewelry Ryan had given me, any furniture I had chosen, anything valuable. Those are marital assets, she explained calmly, and Ryan is entitled to them. Of course he was. Everything had always belonged to Ryan. She packed my things into garbage bags, not boxes. Garbage bags? Like I was being removed from the house the same way you take out the trash. If you believe what my husband and mother-in-law did, taking everything, humiliating me, and treating me like I didn't matter was right, feel free to comment support. But if you know deep down that no one deserves to be disrespected, replaced, and pushed out of their own life like that, then comment don't support. Your voice matters more than you think, and your perspective could help someone else feel less alone. Sometimes. Choosing what's right starts with simply speaking up. Through all of this, there was one person I believed I could still trust. Megan Carter. We had been friends since high school. 20 years of shared history, relationships, breakups, babies, life. She was the first person I called after Ryan told me he wanted a divorce. She was there immediately. Supportive, concerned, always checking in, always asking how I was holding up. She would come over with a bottle of wine and sit with me while I cried. Let me fall apart without judgment. At least. That's what I thought was happening. She told me I deserved better. She said Ryan was making a terrible mistake. She said I was stronger than this. And I believed her. At least, I wanted to. but something didn't sit right. It was small at first. Subtle. The kind of feeling you can ignore if you try hard enough. But I've never been very good at ignoring details. That was always my strength. The first time it happened, I brushed it off. I mentioned to Megan, casually, that I was thinking about fighting for the house. Nothing serious. Just a thought. The next day, Noah came home from his father's place and said, "Dad told me it wouldn't work." I hadn't told Ryan. Not a word. Still, I let it go. Coincidence. I told myself. Then a few days later, I told Megan I had started looking at apartments. I even mentioned a specific neighborhood. It was quieter, affordable, close to Noah's school. The next evening, Ryan made an offhand comment while walking past me. "That area's way too expensive for you." Just like that. Like he had been part of the conversation. That's when something shifted. Not outside. Inside me. A quiet realization. Slow, heavy, unavoidable. Looking back, the signs had always been there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. The way Megan's eyes would light up whenever Ryan entered a room. The way she laughed at his jokes just a little too hard. The way her compliments lingered just a little too long. She always asked about him first. Always. "How's Ryan? How's the business? Is he happy?" Not "How are you, Jenna?" Not "How are you holding up?" No. Ryan was always the center of her curiosity. 15 years? 15 years of watching my marriage from the sidelines. And somewhere along the way, she stopped being on my side. She had been in love with my husband. For years. And Ryan had always liked attention. Admiration. He collected it the way some people collect trophies. And Megan was easy. Predictable. He knew exactly how to keep her close. A little smile. A little attention. Just enough to make her feel special. Different. Chosen. I don't know if he ever promised her anything. He didn't need to. Hope was enough. Hope kept her loyal. Hope made her useful. My best friend had become his source of information. 20 years of friendship. Traded away for a few glances and empty possibilities. If I'm being honest. I almost laughed when I realized it. Not because it was funny. Because it was so expected. At least she could have asked for something in return. But the truth is, none of that was the worst part. Not Ryan, not Evelyn, not even Megan. The worst part was Noah. My son saw everything. He saw the way Ryan brought Chloe into our home like she belonged there. He saw his grandmother packing my life into garbage bags. He saw the way his father looked at me, like I was nothing. And slowly, carefully, Ryan started working on him. Not loudly, not aggressively, quietly, strategically. "Your mom is making this harder than it needs to be. I just want everyone to be happy. She's the one dragging this out. I'm trying to be fair." It sounded reasonable, calm, measured. That was Ryan's strength. He didn't need to shout. He just needed to repeat something enough times, and people would start to believe it. Even our son. Noah didn't turn against me. Not completely. But he started pulling away. He became quieter, more distant. Like he was standing in the middle of something he didn't understand. Watching. Trying to decide who was telling the truth. And Ryan was very convincing. I could have lost everything. The house. The money. The life I had spent 15 years building. But none of that compared to the way it felt when Noah looked at me. Like I might be the problem. That was the real damage. That was the cut that didn't heal. I knew then I couldn't keep pretending I was just surviving this. I needed a plan. So I hired a lawyer, Elena Marquez. She had been recommended by someone from my old firm, 52, sharp, Precise. The kind of woman who didn't waste time on sympathy. She reviewed everything, every document, every detail, every angle. Then she looked up at me and said, very clearly, "You helped build this business. You are entitled to half of everything. The house, the company, the accounts. We fight." I held her gaze. Let the silence stretch just long enough. Then I asked quietly, "What if I don't want to fight?" Elena stared at me, not confused, not concerned, just stunned. Like I had suddenly started speaking a language she didn't recognize. Like I had suggested something completely irrational, like sending Ryan a thank you card and wishing him well. She thought I was broken, depressed, too exhausted to stand up for myself. Elena looked at me like I was another woman who had stayed too long and lost too much. She had no idea. None of them did. I moved into a small apartment with Noah not long after. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen so small it made my old pantry feel luxurious. Half of our boxes didn't even fit. They stayed stacked in the corner of Noah's room, untouched, like physical proof of how far we had fallen, or at least, how far everyone thought we had fallen. Meanwhile, Ryan was thriving, at least. That's what it looked like. He started posting photos with Chloe, smiling, relaxed, carefree, new chapter, new energy, blessed. That was the caption. Evelyn commented almost immediately, "So happy for you. Sweetheart, you deserve this happiness." Of course he did. My sister called me the same night. Furious. "You need a real lawyer," she said. "Not someone polite, someone aggressive. Take him for everything he has." Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had advice. Everyone thought they understood my situation better than I did. They all saw the same thing. A woman who had given up. A woman who didn't have the strength to fight. A woman letting her husband walk all over her. They were all wrong. There's something people don't realize about being underestimated. When people think you're weak, they stop watching you. They stop being careful. They stop protecting their secrets. And that's when you start to see everything. 3 years. That's how long I had been carrying the truth. 3 years of knowing exactly what Ryan Blackwood really was. 3 years of understanding that the life we were living was built on something fragile, something false, something that could collapse at any moment. It started on a random Tuesday night, 3 years before the divorce. Ryan was working late. He said that often back then. I believed him. At the time, I was sitting at the dining table, going through the company books, reconciling accounts, reviewing transactions, doing the quiet, invisible work that kept everything functioning. And then, I saw it. A transfer. Small enough not to draw attention, but unfamiliar. An account I didn't recognize. Then another. And another. Individually. They didn't look suspicious. Together, they formed a pattern. Money was leaving our accounts. Consistently. Quietly. Disappearing into places I had never seen before. So I started digging. Carefully. Systematically. I stayed up until 3 in the morning, tracing every movement I could find, following the trail one transaction at a time, and what I uncovered made my hands go cold. Ryan had been borrowing against everything. Everything we owned. Everything I thought we owned. The house. Our house. The one everyone admired. The one people complimented every time they visited. The one I believed was fully paid off. It wasn't. It had 3 mortgages. The original loan, $400,000. A second mortgage taken out 4 years earlier, $350,000. And a third one, taken out just 2 years before that night. Another $350,000. Total debt on the house, $1.1 million. Its actual value, around $850,000. We weren't building equity. We were drowning in it, buried under it. $250,000 underwater on a home I thought was secure. And that was just the beginning. The business was worse. Lines of credit maxed out. $200,000. Unpaid taxes. $85,000. Vendor debts. $120,000. Equipment loans. $75,000. The company Ryan bragged about at every event, the company everyone thought was thriving, was quietly collapsing under nearly $500,000 of debt. And I was the only one who knew. The deeper I looked, the worse it became. The business that Ryan proudly showcased to the world wasn't thriving. It was suffocating under nearly $500,000 of debt. And the illusion didn't stop there. Even the cars weren't ours. All three were leased. Expensive monthly payments with massive balloon payments waiting at the end like ticking time bombs. We didn't own anything. Not really. We just carried obligations. Heavy ones. I sat alone in the kitchen that night, surrounded by printed statements, spreadsheets, notes scattered across the table. 3 a.m, and I started calculating. Total debt, approximately $1.9 million. Total actual value of everything we had, maybe $1.6 million. We weren't building wealth. We were buried. $300,000 underwater. At minimum. Maybe more. I remember staring at the numbers, trying to make sense of it, trying to understand how something that looked so successful could be so empty underneath. But one question wouldn't leave me alone. Where did all the money go? So I kept digging. Not just that night. For weeks. Every spare moment I had. I traced transactions, followed transfers, connected patterns. And slowly, a full picture emerged. One that was far worse than I had imagined. Cryptocurrency investments. $180,000. Gone. Not lost in a calculated risk. Wiped out. Completely. Then gambling. $75,000. Disappeared in small. Consistent withdrawals. Not one mistake. A habit. Then something else. Something that made my hands stop moving entirely. An apartment. A lease agreement I had never seen. A place I had never heard of. Rented for a woman I didn't know existed. $60,000. In rent and furnishings. Paid quietly. Carefully hidden. And that wasn't all. There were lifestyle expenses that never came home. Luxury watches. Designer suits. Trips. Flights. Hotel bookings. Experiences I had never been part of. Another $85,000? Just gone. That was the moment it became clear. Ryan wasn't building anything. He wasn't creating an empire. He was stacking illusions. A house of cards built with borrowed money, on top of more borrowed money, already burning from the inside, from a distance. We looked perfect, successful, stable, the kind of life people envied. But up close, it was hollow, fragile, ready to collapse at the slightest pressure, like a mannequin in a storefront. Convincing, until you touched it. My first instinct was to confront him, to demand answers, to ask how he could do this to us, to me, to our son. I wanted to scream, to break something, to force the truth into the open, but I didn't. Because I knew Ryan. I had spent 15 years watching how he handled problems. He didn't admit. He redirected. He didn't take responsibility. He rewrote reality. If I confronted him, he would explain everything away. He would make it sound temporary, strategic, necessary. He would twist it until I questioned myself, until I wondered if I was overreacting, until somehow It became my fault. And worse, if he knew that I knew, he would protect himself. At my expense. There was one thing he didn't control. One thing I had never allowed him to touch. My own money. My grandmother's voice had never left me. A woman should have her own money. Not hidden, not secret. Just hers. I had my retirement account from my years at the law firm. I had rolled it over when I left. But I never touched it. By then, it had grown to around $180,000, every cent earned by me, legally separate, untouchable. And then there was my grandmother, when she passed away. She left me $340,000. Her will had been very clear. This money is for Jenna alone. I had kept it separate for 6 years, never mixed it with household funds, never used it for shared expenses, never gave Ryan access. She had maintained her own account for 50 years. Not secret money. Just hers. She was the smartest woman I ever knew. Altogether, I had about $520,000 that was legally mine, protected, separate, safe. So I made a decision. I didn't confront Ryan. I didn't accuse him. I didn't say a word. I protected myself. Quietly. Carefully. I reached out to my uncle, Victor Hale, a retired accountant. Precise. Methodical. The kind of man who understood how money moves and how to keep it from being taken. Together. We created something that Ryan would never be able to touch. An irrevocable trust. Not for me. For Noah. Every dollar I had that truly belonged to me went into that trust. My retirement account. My inheritance. All of it. My name wasn't listed as a beneficiary. Ryan's name wasn't anywhere near it. Legally, it didn't exist for either of us. It existed for one person. Noah. His future. College. A first home. Emergency protection. A life that couldn't be taken away from him the way mine almost had been. And once that was secured, I moved to the next step. I documented everything. Every mortgage. Every loan. Every hidden account. Every transaction that didn't make sense. Every piece of evidence that told the truth Ryan was hiding. I printed copies. Stacks of them. I stored some at my sister's house. I placed others in a secure deposit box. I saved digital copies on an encrypted drive. Nothing was left to chance. Nothing could disappear. Nothing could be erased. And then, I waited. Because I knew Ryan. Men like him don't stay. Not forever. They get bored. They get restless. They find something newer. Someone easier. Or they convince themselves they deserve more. It was never a question of if. Only when. So I prepared for that moment. 3 years. 3 years of waiting. 3 years of watching him dig himself deeper. 3 years of attending dinners, smiling politely, standing beside him while people admired the life we had built, knowing it wasn't real, knowing it could collapse at any moment, knowing he was already collapsing it himself. I learned patience. Real patience. The kind that doesn't show on the surface. The kind that looks like acceptance. I became very good at pretending. Very good at acting like I didn't see what was happening, like I didn't understand, like I was still the same woman who trusted him completely. So when Ryan finally sat across from me and asked for a divorce, when he demanded the house, the cars, the business, everything, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was perfect. He thought he was taking everything, but he wasn't asking for assets. He was asking for debt. He just didn't know it yet. Back in the present, sitting across from Elena Marquez, I placed 3 thick binders on her desk. 3 years of evidence. Every document, every number, every truth Ryan had tried to bury. She didn't speak at first. She just read, Page after page, silently, carefully. Almost an hour passed before she finally looked up. And when she did, her entire expression had changed. "You've known about this for 3 years," she said slowly. "I was waiting," I answered. I knew he would leave eventually. And when he asked for everything, I held her gaze. He asked for all of it, including the debt. He just doesn't understand that yet. Elena leaned back in her chair. The sympathy was gone. The concern was gone. What replaced it was something sharper, something closer to respect, maybe even admiration. "So when you sign everything over," she said carefully, "you walk away clean." "Yes." He takes the house, the business, the cars, and every liability attached to them becomes his. I nodded. "All of it. And your money." "My retirement and my inheritance were never mixed with marital assets," I said calmly. "They're legally separate, and they're now in a trust. For Noah, untouchable, protected, safe." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, she smiled. Slowly. Not a polite smile, not a reassuring one, a dangerous one. "Mrs. Price," she said, "I think I owe you an apology. I thought you had given up." I smiled back. A small one. Controlled. Everyone thinks that. I paused just long enough. That's the point. In that moment, Elena stopped looking at me like a broken woman trying to survive a divorce, and started looking at me like something else entirely. Someone who had planned every move. Someone who had already won. The shift in her eyes was almost visible. From concern to calculation. From doubt to strategy. The plan was already in place. The numbers had been verified. The documentation was airtight. There was nothing left to build. Only something left to execute. All I had to do now was let Ryan believe he was winning. And that part was easy. Because no one plays the role of the gracious loser better than a woman who has been practicing for 15 years. The next 3 months became a performance. And I became exactly who they expected me to be. Broken. That was the version of me everyone believed in. Defeated. Exhausted. Barely holding myself together. I leaned into it completely. At every mediation session, I showed up looking exactly how they expected. Red eyes, tired posture, hands that trembled just enough to be convincing. I spoke softly, carefully, like every word took effort, like I had lost the strength to fight, lost the will to argue, lost the ability to demand anything at all. Even the mediator seemed uncomfortable at times. I could see it in the way she shifted in her seat, the way her eyes lingered on me just a second too long. During our second session, I lowered my voice and said quietly, "I just want enough to start over." I paused. Let the silence sit. I'm not trying to make this harder than it already is. I glanced down at my hands, then back up again. I know the business is his life's work. I know the house means everything to him. I don't want to destroy what's left of our family. It sounded fragile. It sounded sincere. It sounded exactly like surrender. Then I made my request. $50,000 in cash. My personal belongings. Shared custody of Noah. That was all. Nothing more. No demands. No fight. No resistance. Ryan agreed immediately. Of course he did. He had been preparing for a battle, expecting resistance, planning to defend every asset. Instead, I handed him everything. Any reasonable lawyer would have pushed for half. Half the house, half the business, half of everything we had built. But I wasn't asking for half. I was asking for crumbs. And Ryan looked at me across that table with something close to pity. Like I was a wounded animal he was mercifully putting out of its misery. If there had been an audience, I would have deserved an award, an Oscar, at the very least, because I played that role perfectly. And my only audience was the man who thought he had already won. With every passing week, his arrogance grew. He stopped pretending, stopped being careful, stopped even trying to look reasonable. He started telling anyone who would listen that I hadn't even tried to fight. She just gave up. He said, I heard it from people, mutual friends, even strangers. I offered her a fair deal. He would add, and she took it without a word. Evelyn was worse. Much worse. She turned it into a performance. At her social gatherings, her book club, her church group, anywhere people would listen. Ryan is keeping everything, she would say proudly. That woman didn't get a thing. I always knew she wasn't strong enough. She said it like it confirmed everything she had ever believed about me. To celebrate his victory, Ryan bought himself a new watch, $15,000. I saw the charge, company account. Of course it was. He was still spending money like nothing had changed. Still pretending everything was under control. Still digging himself deeper. He wore that watch to our next mediation session, made sure I noticed, lifted his wrist just slightly when he spoke. Subtle, but intentional. He wanted me to see it. He wanted me to understand the difference between us now. He also took Chloe to dinner at Le Vieux Jardin, the same French restaurant where we had celebrated our 10th anniversary. I recognized the place immediately when I saw the photos. He posted them online, smiling, relaxed. Life is better when you're with the right person. That's what he wrote. The right person. Meaning someone who didn't know the truth yet. Meanwhile, Chloe had started changing the house. My house. The living room had new furniture, the walls had new art, and the kitchen. The kitchen I had spent weeks perfecting. She painted it gray. Flat. Lifeless gray. I had spent 3 weeks choosing that sage green, testing samples, watching how the light hit the walls at different times of day, trying to get it exactly right. And she covered it in one afternoon, like it didn't matter, like none of it had ever mattered. Gray suited her. Gray suited that house now. Gray suited what was coming. Megan kept calling, still playing her role, still pretending to be my friend. How are you holding up? She would ask. Her voice soft, concerned. But there was something underneath it, something sharp, something searching. I answered every time, carefully, perfectly. I'm okay. I would say quietly, I just want this to be over. I let my voice crack just enough. I don't have the energy to fight anymore. And somewhere, not far away, Ryan would hear those words, exactly as planned. I just want it to be over. I would tell Megan, letting my voice crack at exactly the right moment. I can't do this anymore. I don't have the strength to fight. And like clockwork, within hours, Ryan would know. I could almost picture it. The way he would lean back. A little more relaxed, a little more confident, letting his guard drop piece by piece. Megan thought she was playing me, thought she was gathering information, staying one step ahead. But all she really was a messenger. A very predictable one, and not a very valuable one either. While the adults were busy playing their quiet little games, Noah was watching. My son, smart, observant, far more aware than anyone gave him credit for. He started noticing things, small inconsistencies at first, then bigger ones. He noticed Ryan's new $15,000 watch, but also heard him say there wasn't enough money for a school trip. He saw Chloe's shopping bags piling up near the entrance of the house, designer labels, expensive brands. but heard Ryan complain about finances being tight. He saw the lifestyle, and he heard the excuses. And slowly, he began to understand something didn't add up. One evening, he came over to my apartment, sat down at our small kitchen table, the one that didn't quite match the chairs, the one that still felt temporary. He looked at me, really looked at me. His eyes were serious, so much like his father's, but without the calculation, without the performance. There was something else there, something Ryan had lost a long time ago. Honesty. Mom, he said quietly, is Dad actually rich? I didn't answer right away. I just watched him. Then I asked gently, what do you think? He hesitated. Processing, I think. He said slowly. Something's wrong. I think he's pretending. I reached across the table and took his hand, gave it a small squeeze. Just trust me, I said softly. Wait a little longer. That was all he needed. My 15-year-old son had figured out the truth before 2 lawyers and a financial advisor ever did. I probably should have paid him consulting fees. Behind the scenes, Elena was preparing everything, every detail, every document. With precision. The main agreement was simple on the surface. Clear. Straightforward. I was giving up everything. The house. The business. The vehicles. All of it would go to Ryan. In return, I would receive my small settlement and walk away. Clean. At least, that's what it looked like. But attached to that agreement was something far more important. A detailed liability disclosure, every debt, every mortgage, every loan, every financial obligation tied to those assets, all listed, clearly, legally. Impossible to ignore if you actually read it. When Ryan signed for the assets, he would also be signing for everything attached to them. The mortgages would become his responsibility, entirely. The business debts would transfer to him, fully. The car leases, his problem, alone. It was all there, black and white, perfectly legal, perfectly structured, completely devastating. Elena once told me something I never forgot. I thought as I reviewed the documents again. Legal documents are like poetry, boring, expensive poetry. That can ruin someone's life. It was my favorite kind. 2 weeks before the final hearing, Ryan's lawyer called Elena, Marcus Delaney, experienced, careful. The kind of man who paid attention to details. Unlike his client. My client is assuming a significant amount of assets. Marcus said cautiously over the phone. I would strongly recommend a full financial audit before we finalize anything, just to confirm the numbers. Elena stayed calm, professional. Of course. She replied. We'll provide any documentation you need. And she meant it. Every number was real. Every figure was verified. There was nothing to hide. But when Marcus brought the suggestion to Ryan, he didn't hesitate. He shut it down immediately. No questions. No review. No interest. Just confidence. The kind of confidence that comes right before everything falls apart. No audits. Ryan said, I wasn't in the room, but I could hear it in my head. The tone, the confidence, the certainty. I built that company. I know exactly what it's worth. I'm not paying someone to tell me what I already know. Marcus Delaney tried again. Careful, measured. I strongly recommend we verify the asset values before you sign. This is a significant no. Ryan cut him off. Short. Final. I want this done. A pause. Then the real reason surfaced. Chloe wants this done. I want this done. No more delays. That was it. Not strategy. Not caution. Convenience. Marcus had been practicing law for over 30 years. He knew that tone. Knew exactly what it meant. A client about to make a mistake. a big one. But experience also teaches you something else. You can advise, you can warn, but you cannot force someone to listen. So he did what good lawyers do when they see a disaster coming. He protected himself. He prepared a waiver, a formal document stating that he had advised his client to conduct a full financial review and that his client was declining that advice. Ryan signed it, without reading it. Of course he did. Just like he signed everything else. Quickly, confidently, without a second thought. Never underestimate the influence of a woman who wants things done quickly. Chloe was impatient, and that impatience was worth more to me than anything I could have negotiated. The night before the hearing, my phone lit up. A message from Ryan. "Thank you for not making this ugly." I stared at the screen for a long time. 15 years. 15 years of building his business, managing his life, raising our son, standing beside him through everything. And he was thanking me for making his exit easy, for not complicating the process of discarding me. I typed slowly, carefully. "I just want what's best for Noah." I hit send and set my phone down. What was best for Noah was already secured. His future protected, his foundation untouchable, and his father was about to learn a lesson that would cost him everything. Elena called me later that evening. "Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Final hearing," she said. "Judge Eleanor Whitaker." A brief pause. "Are you ready?" I looked around my apartment. The mismatched furniture, the half-unpacked boxes in the corner, the small kitchen I had painted soft green. The color I chose because it reminded me of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. "I've been ready," I said quietly. "For 3 years. 3 years of waiting. 3 years of planning. And now, it was here." Strangely, I didn't feel nervous. I felt anticipation, like a child waiting for something long promised. If that something happened to involve a courtroom and financial consequences, so be it. The next morning came quickly. Thursday, 9 a.m. Ryan would walk into that courtroom expecting to walk out victorious, expecting to collect everything he believed he deserved. He had no idea. He was about to inherit something else entirely. A financial collapse. One he had signed for himself. One he had insisted on. In writing. With witnesses. And that was the best part. He hadn't been tricked. He hadn't been forced. He had asked for it. If you've stayed this far into the story, then you already know what's coming. Something satisfying. Something earned. And if you haven't already, you know what to do. Now. Let's finish it. Thursday morning, 9 o'clock. Courtroom 4, B. I remember every detail. The sunlight filtering through tall windows. The faint smell of polished wood. The quiet rustle of paper as attorneys prepared their files. It was calm, orderly, almost peaceful, and yet, this was where everything would end. 15 years of marriage, reduced to signatures, and where 3 years of patience would finally pay off. Ryan arrived before I did. Of course he did. Confident, prepared, completely unaware of what was waiting for him. Evelyn didn't give up easily. She just changed her approach. If she couldn't reach me directly, she went through Noah. "Tell your mother I didn't know about the financial problems," she said. "Tell her I'm sorry for how I treated her. Tell her I want to talk." Noah listened. He didn't interrupt her, didn't argue, just stood there, looking at her with a calmness that didn't belong to a 15-year-old. Then he answered, simply and clearly. "Mom's busy building her life. She doesn't have time for excuses." That was it. No anger, no emotion, just truth. Evelyn wanted forgiveness. I wanted peace. Only one of us got what we wanted, and for the first time in a long time. Everything felt balanced. Noah understood now. Not because I explained it. I never sat him down and told him the whole story. He saw it for himself. He saw the court documents. He heard his father's excuses. He watched Chloe leave without hesitation. He watched Evelyn scramble to rewrite reality. He watched the entire illusion fall apart. And he connected the pieces on his own, about a month after the divorce. We were sitting in the apartment together. Our apartment. The small one with the soft green kitchen. The one that had once felt temporary, but now felt like home. The boxes were finally unpacked. The space was ours. Quiet. Simple. Honest. He sat across from me at the table and said quietly, "You knew, didn't you?" I looked at him. "You waited 3 years." I nodded. "I needed to make sure you were safe." I told him, "No matter what happened between your father and me, I had to know you would be okay." I told him about the trust, the money set aside for him, protected, untouchable, a future that no one could take away. He didn't speak right away. He just sat there, absorbing it. Then he stood up and walked around the table, and he hugged me. Not the quick, distracted kind. Not the kind teenagers give out of obligation. This was different. This was understanding. This was respect. This was pride. I hadn't felt that from him in months, and in that moment, I knew something had been restored. Something real. The settlement money wasn't much, $50,000, but it was enough. First month's rent, deposit, furniture that didn't wobble or feel temporary. It wasn't luxury, but it was stability. And after everything, stability felt like wealth. The trust remained untouched, exactly where it belonged. Noah's future was secure, college, a first home someday, a safety net no one could dismantle. And me? I finally turned back to something I had given up years ago. Interior design, the dream I had set aside at 23 to help build Ryan's business. I started small. One client, a woman named Sandra, 52, ending a 28-year marriage. She stood in the middle of her empty apartment, looking completely lost. "How do you start over?" she asked me. I thought about it for a moment. Then I told her the only honest answer I had. One room at a time. One color at a time. One day at a time. We started with her kitchen, painted it the same soft green as mine. When she saw it finished, she cried. Happy tears. She said, smiling through them, "It feels like a beginning." And that's when I realized I wasn't just rebuilding spaces, I was helping people rebuild themselves. About 3 months after the divorce, there was a knock on my door. I opened it, and for a moment, I didn't recognize him. Ryan. He looked different, thinner, not in a healthy way, dark circles under his eyes, his suit wrinkled, his watch gone. Everything about him looked worn down, like life had finally caught up with him. He stood there, uncertain. I didn't know it was this bad. He said quietly, "I made mistakes. I see that now. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." I leaned against the doorframe and looked at him. Really looked at him. This man I had loved for half my life. This man who had thrown me away without hesitation. This man who was now drowning in consequences he created himself. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Maybe we can fix this. Maybe we can—" He stopped, because he couldn't say it. Couldn't bring himself to ask for what he really wanted. Help. From me. After everything. "You asked for everything except Noah," I said calmly. "You got exactly what you asked for." He swallowed. "Jenna, please. Goodbye, Ryan, and I closed the door. I watched him through the peephole for a few minutes. He stood there, not knocking, not leaving, just standing, like he didn't know what to do next. Eventually, he walked away. And that was the end. That night, after Noah went to bed, I sat alone in the living room. The apartment was quiet, peaceful, on the shelf. My grandmother's photo looked back at me. Next to it, the recipe box. The one thing Evelyn had almost taken. The one thing that mattered most. You were right, I whispered softly. About everything. Keep your own money. Know your worth. And never let anyone make you feel small. The space around me wasn't big. It wasn't luxurious. It wasn't impressive. But it was mine. Every decision, every color, every piece of furniture. Mine. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. Real. Quiet. Undeniable freedom. I have it in writing. Marcus said calmly. You refused. Through the glass doors. I caught sight of Chloe. She had been standing there, waiting, expecting a victory, expecting to walk out beside a successful man who had just secured everything. But her expression changed. Slowly, noticeably. I watched her eyes move from Marcus to Ryan, and then back again. And for the first time, she really looked at him. Not the version he had presented, not the confident businessman, but the reality, the truth she had never been shown. The realization hit her quickly, sharp, unavoidable. This wasn't the life she thought she was stepping into. She didn't say anything, didn't argue, didn't even hesitate. She turned and walked away. Fast, her heels striking the marble floor in quick, decisive steps, not looking back. By the time I reached the elevator, she was gone. Her exit from my life was even faster than her entrance into it. At least she was consistent. I stepped outside into the April sunlight. The sky was clear, blue. The air felt lighter than it had in years. Behind me, I could still hear Ryan's voice echoing faintly through the building. Angry, desperate, arguing about fairness, about how none of this was his fault. But I didn't turn around. I didn't need to, because everything that mattered was in front of me now. A new life. Smaller, simpler, but entirely mine. And it began the moment I walked away. The collapse started almost immediately, faster than I had expected. Within 2 weeks, Chloe was gone. She packed her things in the middle of the night, quietly, efficiently, left a short note behind. This isn't what I signed up for. The gray kitchen stayed exactly as she had left it. Cold, empty. A reflection of everything that had been built on illusion. Within a month, Ryan tried to sell the house, but reality doesn't negotiate when you owe more than something is worth. There are no buyers, only banks. Calling, waiting, pressuring, suggesting short sales. Within 2 months, the business started to fail. Payments were missed. Accounts froze. Vendors filed lawsuits, one after another. The company he had spent 15 years building, the one I had quietly supported for 11, began to fall apart, piece by piece, within 3 months. Ryan was meeting with bankruptcy attorneys. The man who once spoke about expansion, growth, legacy, was now calculating what little he might be able to protect. The answer was almost nothing. Evelyn's perfect son had become a man making uncomfortable phone calls, asking family members for help, showing up with explanations. Excuses? Stories? No one had known about the debt, so they looked for someone to blame. She must have hidden it. I heard through whispers. I was tricked. But the truth didn't change. The documents were clear. Every loan, in his name. Every mortgage, his signature. Every decision, his. The gambling losses, the failed investments, the apartment, the spending. None of it belonged to me, and none of it ever had. I heard that Evelyn's holiday letter that year was brief. Ryan is exploring new opportunities. Yes, opportunities in debt restructuring. It would have been almost funny if it hadn't been so predictable. Everything settled in a kind of quiet symmetry. Actions, consequences, cause and effect. Finally catching up, about a week after the hearing. Megan called me. Her voice was different. Shaking, uncertain. I didn't know it was this bad. She said quickly, "I'm so sorry. Jenna, I never meant for any of this. I thought Ryan and I thought I didn't answer. I didn't interrupt. I didn't comfort her." And when she paused, waiting, I said nothing. There are some things that don't need a response. Some betrayals that don't deserve closure. 20 years of friendship, traded away for attention that was never real, for promises that were never spoken, for a man who used people and discarded them when they were no longer useful. She called again, 2 more times, then a third, and then she stopped. I imagine she's still waiting, still hoping, still believing she meant something more than she did. But people like Ryan don't look back, and people like Megan learn that lesson too late. Evelyn tried one last approach. She went through Noah. "Tell your mother I didn't know about the debt. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I want to talk." Noah listened, really listened, then looked at her calmly and said, "Mom's busy building her life. She doesn't have time for excuses." That was the moment everything settled. Evelyn wanted forgiveness. I wanted peace. Only one of us got it. Noah understood everything now. Not because I explained it, because he saw it. The documents, the lies, the collapse. He watched Chloe leave, watched his father fall apart, watched the truth reveal itself piece by piece. About a month after the divorce, he sat with me in our small apartment, the one with the green kitchen, the one that finally felt like home. "You knew," he said quietly. "You waited 3 years." I nodded. "I needed to make sure you were protected." I told him about the trust, the money set aside for him. Safe, untouchable. His future secured no matter what happened between his father and me. He didn't say anything at first. Then he hugged me. Not a quick, casual hug. A real one. The kind that said he understood. The kind that said he was proud. That mattered more than anything I had lost. The settlement money helped me start over. Rent, furniture, the basics. Nothing luxurious, but it was stable. And for the first time in years, it was mine. I went back to something I had once loved. Interior design. The dream I had set aside at 23 to help build Ryan's business. I started small. One client. A woman rebuilding her life after a long marriage. She stood in her empty apartment and asked me, "How do you start over?" I told her the truth. One room at a time. One day at a time. We painted her kitchen green. She cried when she saw it. New beginnings. She said, 3 months after everything ended. Ryan showed up at my door. I barely recognized him. He looked worn down, tired in a way that couldn't be fixed. His watch was gone. His confidence, too. I didn't know it was this bad. He said quietly, "I made mistakes." I listened. Watched him. This man I had once loved. This man who had thrown me away. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Maybe we can fix this." He couldn't even finish the sentence. Couldn't say what he really wanted. Help. My help. After everything. You asked for everything except Noah. I said calmly. You got exactly what you wanted. I closed the door, and that was the end. That night, I sat in my small living room, looked at my grandmother's photo, the recipe box beside it, the one thing that mattered most. You were right, I whispered. Know your worth. Keep what's yours. The apartment was quiet, simple, but it was mine. And for the first time in a very long time, I was free. There was a moment when I could have chosen anger. I could have confronted him immediately, exposed everything, or fought loudly for what I believed I deserved. But I didn't. I chose patience. I chose to protect myself quietly, to prepare instead of react. And in the end, when he came back asking for help after taking everything from me, I chose to close the door and walk forward instead of going back. That choice taught me something I will carry for the rest of my life. Strength is not always loud. Sometimes it's silent, controlled, and deeply intentional. It's knowing your worth even when others try to diminish it. It's building your future instead of destroying yourself trying to prove a point. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is walk away with peace. Now I want to ask you something. If you were in my place, and you made the same choice I did to protect yourself, stay calm, and walk away without looking back. Write support so I know I made the right decision. If you would choose the opposite to confront, to fight, or to stay right now, and if you're still thinking, still torn between your heart and your logic, right time. Your answer matters more than you think, because your voice might help someone else who is going through something similar right now. If this story resonated with you, don't just scroll away. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, like, and share this video. You're not just supporting me, you're helping build a community where people feel seen, understood, and stronger together. And sometimes, that's exactly what someone needs to keep going.